Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we got an interesting segment on the line for you guys, and his name is Adrian Peterson. And if the Giants, for whatever reason, should consider signing him as a free agent. And right now, Adrian Peterson is actually being mocked to the Giants for whatever reason, or predicted to land with Big Blue, according to an article that I'm looking at right now. And a really interesting. So Jack Brown of The Score, somebody I have never heard, certainly thinks that Adrian Peterson should end up with the Giants. And he says, Peterson continues to fight back harder against Father Time than anyone in the NFL not named Tom Brady. After 2 seasons in Washington, 36-year-old had 604 yards and 7 touchdowns for the Lions in 2020. Peterson needs just 450 more to pass Barry Sanders to 4th on the all-time rushing list, so it's given he will try and play at least one more campaign. However, finding a landing spot for him is hard. Peterson's lack of receiving skills make him an awkward fit as a number 2, but he will almost certainly need to take on a backup role to an established starter, perhaps Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants or Austin Eckler of the Chargers, but perhaps the Oklahoma product's best chance of earning a ring and getting enough work to pass Sanders could be with the run-happy Seahawks. Meanwhile, this guy completely forgets that the Giants have Devonte Booker. So, Anthony, when you're talking about Adrian Peterson, do you think he's a fit with the Giants? Do you think there's even a slight chance, or why would there even be a slight chance of this reality?
I think if there is a slight chance of this becoming a reality, it is due to the fact that Saquon Barkley is coming off of an injury, and that injury happens to be really, really similar to the one that Adrian Peterson suffered earlier in his career. Now, as we all know, Adrian Peterson is one of the greatest running backs of all time, but when he was in his prime, he was a dominant force. He was completely unstoppable, and he was with the Minnesota Vikings. But then he tore his ACL, and he had to fight back from that, and that wasn't an easy thing to fight back from. A torn ACL is always a difficult injury to recover from, especially for a running back. Running backs, that position is just a lot of wear and tear on your knees, on your legs. But he did it. He came back, and he came back really, really strong, was a phenomenal player post-injury. I believe this injury happened in, 2014, came back in 2015, led the league in rushing yards, just 1 season removed from a torn ACL, which is really impressive. And that's what you hope to see from Saquon Barkley. Coming off of a torn ACL, week 2 of this past season. Adrian Peterson suffered his in week 1 of 2014. So you've got basically the same situation where players really, really talented, dominating the league, gets injured, needs to come back. And I think that might be good for Saquon Barkley, just to have that mentorship from Adrian Peterson. Like I said, one of the greatest running backs of all time, someone that Saquon Barkley has been very open about watching, studying, and appreciating. This is one of his idols. So yeah, for Saquon Barkley, it would be really cool to kind of be in the same room, be in the same position room as his idol. You know, Saquon Barkley can learn from Adrian Peterson, work with Adrian Peterson, work out with Adrian Peterson, and get some tidbits and some information on how Adrian Peterson recovered from that injury back in 2014 to 2015. That would be really beneficial for Saquon Barkley. That's what I see from this. That makes sense. Other than that, not a whole lot else. I think the Giants kind of invested a lot into the backup running back position. I think they have, 7 or 8 running backs on their roster right now. Of course, they're going to trim that fat by the end of training camp, by the end of preseason. But right now, they've got a lot of backup running backs, and I don't really know how realistic it is that they add another, even though this is like an established veteran, one of the greats in Adrian Peterson. Just don't know if this is a move that the Giants would actually be willing to make. Though, on Saquon Barkley's perspective, I'm sure he would love it if they did, and it does make sense for Saquon Barkley specifically. Before the Giants, I don't know, Alex, what do you think? Like, does Adrian Peterson even make sense for the Giants to sign at this point with 8 running backs on the roster?
As a fan, I'd love to see Adrian Peterson with the Giants. As just a fan, just the nostalgia of, remembering how great he is and what he's done in the past. I mean, freaking screw it. Just like, I'd love to see Adrian Peterson in blue. But again, we don't really need him. The Giants don't need him. As a fan, sure, love it. As an actual representative of the Giants, if I was pretending I am the general manager or I am whatever, I wouldn't do it, obviously, because we have Devonte Booker, and Devonte Booker is a pretty decent running back. He was considered to be a potential starter at one time. Now he's kind of filling backup roles. He had a couple of big guys ahead of him, like Josh Jacobs in Las Vegas. And now he's coming over to the Giants, where Saquon Barkley is our lead guy. But again, Devonte Booker is more than capable of handling a starting load. That's why the Giants are paying him more than you'd think. So they could have easily went out and signed a backup guy for less money. They signed him to 2 years, $5.5 million. But Devonte Booker has the qualities to be an every down back and a decent receiving back, a decent enough, right? as a former fourth-round pick. The guy is not bad at all. Having him is going to take a lot of stress off of Saquon Barkley. I know Wayne Gallman was our guy last year, but Wayne Gallman was pretty specific in the way that he ran the football. He was very much a north-south runner, not a receiving back by any means. They barely ever threw the ball to him. They did not use him on sweeps, did not use him on tosses or pitches. He was a north-south inside zone power runner. That is what he was. He's not a powerful guy, but he ran with so much forward momentum, and he really had more power than he looks, for a skinnier dude. So Devonte Booker is a little bit different. As in last year, he had 423 yards on 93 rushes. That's 4.5 yards per carry. He averaged 26.4 yards per game, and he had 17 receptions on 21 targets for 84 yards. Dating back to 2018, he had 51 targets, 38 receptions, and 275 yards to the ground, 74.5% catch rate. In his career, he has about a 75% catch rate, which is pretty phenomenal in my opinion. He started out his career with some fumbling issues. He fumbled 4 times in 2016, twice in 2017, but over the last 2 years, he's only fumbled once compared to Dion Lewis, who was fumbling more times. I can't come up with an analogy for how many times he fumbled. It's ridiculous. So guy was fumbling on kick returns. He fumbled on the goal line. He fumbled here. He fumbled there. It was like a Dr. Seuss book, just unbelievable. I think that now Devonte Booker is going to kind of alleviate those issues a tad, and I'm kind of excited to see what he can accomplish with the Giants because he is a starting caliber running back for some teams, and I'd love to have him as a backup guy. And he has experience with Denver and the Raiders, so he's traveled around a bit. He's seen different schemes, he's seen different looks, and I think he'll adjust very nicely to this team. So I'm excited to see what Devonte Booker can do, and I think that he makes Adrian Peterson irrelevant to this conversation. Clearly, this guy from The Score, who no one has ever heard of, and clearly did not know the Giants roster before writing this article, forgot about Devonte Booker. And, Anthony, what are you thinking about him, about Booker, his potential? And they're going to have to rely on him for the first couple games, I think. I think they're going to ease Saquon Barkley, and as Jordan Raanan reported a couple weeks ago, they're not going to rush Saquon back to full action. They're going to probably have him on a 50% snap count for the weeks 1 and 2, and then they'll ease him more and more and more as the season progresses. But Booker will have a more just elevated role to start the year. And I think they're going to rely on him. So, Anthony, what are you thinking about Booker and his potential?
Yeah, I like Devonte Booker as a solid backup running back. He's nothing more, he's nothing less. I think the Giants paid a little bit too much for a solid backup running back, but at this point, who cares? It's chump change at this point. It's not any money that could have gone towards anything significant. Sure, they overpaid Devonte Booker a little bit at the start of free agency, but we're all over that by now because they crushed the rest of free agency, and clearly the money that they spent on Booker did not impede anything that they had in their free agency plans. Still landed Kenny Galladay, re-signed Leonard Williams, and also landed Kyle Rudolph. So really don't care about the Devonte Booker contract anymore, but the thing about that contract now is you can't really justify going ahead and signing Adrian Peterson when you have Devonte Booker as your backup running back being paid as your backup running back, because he's being paid almost starter level money. Like some NFL teams would probably consider that a starting level contract for a running back, but he's the backup running back, and the Giants paid him a pretty fair amount to be the backup running back. So why would they go ahead and pay another guy who's going to need to get paid like the backup running back in Adrian Peterson? Because Adrian Peterson, household name, he's not going to be veterans minimum. He's going to need a little bit more money than that. Not a lot. Of course, it's cheap. He's just going to be a 1-year deal free agent running back. But still, you've already got Devonte Booker signed in as your backup running back. I don't really know if it's plausible to go spend money on another backup running back because, like I said, 8 running backs on the roster. You have Saquon Barkley, that's your RB1. RB2, Devonte Booker. The Giants spent a 6th-round pick on Gary Brightwell. They've got a good special teams running back in Corey Clement. They still have Raquel Armstead. I think this guy is Australian, Sandro Platzgoomer, and Colin Gillespie. That might be the Australian guy. I don't know. They have a couple of those guys that you never heard of. Okay, Cullen's a fullback, and then Taquan Mizzle Sr. So that's 8 backs on the roster, 9 if you include Elijah Penny, who's another fullback. A lot of guys in that backfield. Why go add a 10th to the room? I'm just not so sold on it. I get the idea behind this article. I think that it's interesting for Saquon Barkley to potentially be able to learn from his idol and have that idol mentor him as he tries to get back to health and rehab from this ACL injury, since they did both have such similar injuries. But other than that, it just doesn't make sense. It only makes sense if you're hiring him basically just to coach Saquon Barkley back to health. That's really not a sensible reason to sign somebody, because you have an entire medical staff and you have an entire coaching staff to help Saquon Barkley get back to speed, get back to full speed and return to form. You don't really need Adrian Peterson to do that. Plus, I'm sure if Saquon Barkley wants to, he can reach out to Adrian Peterson, send him a text and say, hey, what were you doing at this point in your recovery process? And I'm sure Adrian Peterson, the way that he's spoken about Saquon in the past and how highly he thinks of him, I'm sure he'll respond to Saquon's text and give him some tips and tricks. He doesn't need to be signed by the Giants to do that. So at the end of the day, that's the only compelling argument for signing Adrian Peterson, but that's really it. And that argument kind of falls apart once you dissect it a little bit. So it just doesn't make sense to me. AP, I don't know where he'll end up. Wherever he ends up, I'll root for him because it's Adrian Peterson. He's a legend and I like watching him play. But unfortunately, I just don't see him landing with the Giants because it just simply doesn't make sense.
Yeah, basically there's two ways this happens. One, they're like, he's willing to sign on a really cheap deal, and he wants to help mentor Saquon Barkley back to full health and really help him with the mental side of things. I think Saquon will make 100% recovery physically, but it's the mental aspect that sometimes can influence a player on the field. Is he comfortable taking a cut on that leg? Is he comfortable jumping or hurdling or whatever Saquon does, because the guy is Superman, Is he comfortable doing those things in live action, or does he have that second, subconscious thought, I can't do that, my leg? That's where he's going to face trouble, in my opinion. I think that's where Adrian Peterson is just such a strong individual. He tore that ACL, he came back, and he ran through that injury, you know what I mean? He just came back full head of steam, and he was just I'm going to kick the crap out of this injury. It's not going to hold me back. So that was really inspiring to see, and I think Saquon could use some of that. But at the same time, Saquon could hit him up on his own time and ask these questions. You don't need to sign him to a contract. So there's kind of the out in that theory. But the only other situation this makes sense is if Saquon does have some sort of setback, if Devonte Booker gets injured, and Adrian Peterson is still around on the free agent market, then sure, you consider him. If he's available, he doesn't sign with a team, there's an injury, yeah, then you can consider Adrian Peterson in free agency. But again, you have Gary Brightwell, who Joe Judge seems to be very high on, out of Arizona. This kid, a pretty decent runner, has some shiftiness, has some, quickness and lateral mobility. And I think he's going to play a part on special teams maybe to start his career with the Giants. But I think he's more of a, he's a sixth-round pick, developmental piece. Let him learn behind Saquon Barkley. Let him be maybe a change of pace back, a receiving back, someone they can use situationally, and I think that's kind of how they'll view him as a future piece and factor in this team. But here's the thing, though: the Giants, every single draft pick, the Giants see as a player who's going to contribute immediately, right? They don't draft guys for later. They're like, how can we maximize a sixth-round pick right now? Probably on special teams. So what's Gary Brightwell going to be doing? Maybe he'll be returning kicks, on kickoffs. Maybe not punts, but maybe kicks. That might be something he does. So everyone has a purpose here. Joe Judge doesn't waste any talent. If you have a spot in that roster, you're contributing in some way. So Gary Brightwell, I anticipate him having some sort of role. As far as Joe Judge said, he likes him as a player. And Anthony, do you see the same reality for Brightwell? I think he's actually a shifty little player. I'm excited to see what they can do to maximize his potential.
Yeah, I think day one they try and get him to contribute on special teams. Other than that, they'll have him contribute a lot in practice. That's important. One thing that, I think fans don't think about enough is some of these rookies are brought in year one just to be good practice players, legitimately on the scout team or playing with the second team and just being good enough to cause some havoc, and iron sharpens iron, basically. So that's pretty much what I see for Gary Brightwell. I don't really anticipate that he sees the field very much in 2021, unless, of course, we suffer another injury at running back. I'm really praying that doesn't happen again, because we need Saquon Barkley healthy this year if we want to make that playoff push that we want to make. So hopefully we don't see much Gary Brightwell in 2021, but I'm sure he'll have a few snaps here and there. He's a solid player. He is a shifty back. I do think he's more of a north to south runner. I like the intensity that he runs with. Isn't afraid to lower his shoulder and go through somebody. But I think that's also going to come into play in practice, going to come into play with just the physicality that the Giants enter each practice with now under Joe Judge. He likes having full tackle practices, and Gary Brightwell might help with that. And plus, he's just solid. He's a solid player to play with in practice. And Hopefully he can contribute right away on special teams, whether that's as a kick returner, punt returner, maybe doing that stuff just exclusively in practice, or maybe even he'll be a gunner. I don't know. Usually those are receivers, those taller, skinnier guys, but can be running backs. Sometimes they're special teamers. Sometimes they go out there and try and block punts as well. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to gauge what the impact of a 6th-round rookie running back is going to be, especially when you know that he's not starting or anything. But I do think that he has a role in the Giants' practices, but I don't see him having much more of a role outside of that unless there's an injury. I really think that Saquon Barkley, yes, they'll ease him into the lineup. Devonte Booker will probably be the guy that takes the weight off of his shoulders for the first couple of weeks. Gary Brightwell might get some snaps here and there, but once Saquon Barkley's fully healthy and ready for a full workload, he's going to receive that full workload, and he's going to be the guy that this offense runs through. So those backup running backs, ultimately, by season's end, are not going to have much relevancy in the Giants' offense. It's going to be the Saquon Barkley show if he can stay healthy, and I can't wait to watch that show all season long.
Me too, man. The Saquon Barkley show will be exciting to watch, especially with all these weapons, Kadarius Toney, Kenny Galladay, and whatnot. So many guys to work with. I'm really excited to see how the Giants can muster and really devise. And Anthony wrote a great article and made a new little video, and he started his own little channel here on Fireside Giants, a new little segment for you guys called Tony's Takes. And really, he's discussing a variety of different things. He has the judge's gavel. He's talking about some more analytical driven and film-based stuff here along to go with this show. And it's really great. You know, he talked about all the different things the Giants have working behind the scenes to improve the offensive line. You know, the coaches that they've brought in to really maximize everything that they've put together in terms of the players. Now they have the players. Now it's time for the coaches to get them to play to their potential. Anthony does a great job diving into all those things, and he's going to have 2 or 3, maybe even 4 videos out a week detailing a couple different things, especially when the season comes along. Doing those little film reviews and stuff will be really beneficial for you guys, so you can get a better idea. And we'll be doing them, of course, on the main page on Fireside Giants. And basically the spin-off is Tony's Takes. It'll be on our YouTube channel, so you can watch it regularly. You know, but Fireside Giants will just be another portion of this big conglomerate we are creating for you guys, so you can enjoy this community of Giants fans even more and really enjoy this content. We want to make you more of a part of this. So if you're a member already, shout out to you guys. We'll get you guys some more love in the future videos in terms of your names and whatnot. So show our appreciation toward you. And if you are a member, you're going to have an influence in helping us pick topics and much more, obviously, for this Tony's Takes and even the Fireside Giant stuff, and really diving into some more film-based things. So I'm really excited for that in the near future. Adrian Peterson, probably never going to be a Giant. The thought is interesting as a fan, as a pretend GM, as a Twitter armchair GM. I'm going to have to decline that that offer. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Fireside Giants. Make sure to go check out Tony's Takes. Awesome latest episode there, about 20 minutes long, talking about a variety of different things, analytical based, a lot more in depth with some of these things. So it's a really great opportunity to learn more about what this Giants team might be putting together this upcoming season. Make sure to subscribe below on YouTube and turn on notifications on for YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. As always, my friends, thank you so much for tuning into Fireside Giants. We will catch you guys on the next video.